Chosen one, have you ever woken up from a dream and felt that it was different from all the others, as if it carried a weight that followed you into the morning instead of fading with sleep? Most dreams disappear quickly. They scatter the moment daily life begins, leaving behind only fragments that no longer seem important. But some dreams do not leave that way. They stay with you. The images remain sharp. The emotions remain unusually strong. The sense of significance refuses to fade. In the same way, there are moments in waking life when a quiet impression rises inside you with unusual force. You suddenly feel that something is right or wrong before facts fully explain it. A decision that looked simple becomes heavy in your spirit. A person seems trustworthy on the surface, yet something inside you tells you to move carefully. A path appears promising, but you feel an unexplained resistance that you cannot shake. Later, events unfold in a way that confirms what you sensed. These experiences often leave chosen ones asking the same question. Was that just imagination? Or was I being shown something? This question matters because throughout history, dreams and intuition have often existed at the edge of discernment. They can become moments where a person senses warning, direction, comfort, or preparation before the natural mind has fully caught up. But they can also become sources of confusion when people interpret every unusual feeling as destiny and every vivid dream as a message without testing it through wisdom. That is why the issue is not simply whether dreams or intuition can be meaningful. The deeper issue is how to interpret them without becoming emotional, impulsive, or spiritually unstable. Scripture makes it clear that God has, at times, used dreams and visions to communicate purpose, warning, and guidance. Joseph received dreams that revealed future realities before he had the life experience to understand how those realities would unfold. Daniel was given visions that required both humility and interpretation because what he saw carried meaning far beyond surface imagery. Even Joseph in the New Testament received direction through dreams that protected the life of Jesus at crucial moments. These experiences were never random entertainment. They carried purpose. But just as important, they required discernment. The dream itself was not enough. The interpretation mattered. The posture of the person receiving it mattered. Their relationship with God mattered. And that is where many chosen ones must become careful. Because not every intense dream is spiritual, and not every strong feeling is divine guidance. Some things come from anxiety, memory, desire, fear, or mental overload. But some things arrive differently. They do not simply stimulate emotion. They bring unusual clarity. They carry a kind of weight that invites reflection instead of panic. They leave behind a sense that something needs to be noticed, prayed over, or understood more deeply. This is often how meaningful signals begin, not with dramatic certainty, but with a quiet persistence that stays longer than ordinary thoughts do. A chosen one may notice that certain dreams connect directly to a current season of life. The imagery may be symbolic, yet strangely relevant. The emotional tone may feel stronger than a normal dream, and instead of disappearing, it follows them into prayer, reflection, and daily awareness. The same is true with intuition. There are moments when clarity arrives unexpectedly, almost like a light turning on inside the mind. You suddenly know you need to slow down, step back, say no, pay attention, or prepare for something. There is no long explanation at first. There is simply knowing. And that knowing, when it is grounded in peace rather than panic, often becomes one of the ways discernment quietly operates in a chosen one's life. The challenge is that many people either dismiss these moments too quickly or exaggerate them too easily. Some ignore every unusual signal because they are afraid of being wrong. Others chase signs so aggressively that they become spiritually unstable, reading meaning into every dream, every coincidence, and every passing feeling. Neither extreme produces wisdom. God's guidance is not meant to create confusion. It is meant to deepen clarity. This is why chosen ones must learn to approach unusual dreams and intuitive impressions with humility. Not every signal is an answer, but some are invitations to pay attention. Not every dream is a revelation, but some carry themes that deserve prayerful reflection. Not every strong feeling is guidance, but some impressions come with a steadiness that proves different over time. The goal is not to become obsessed with mystery. The goal is to become mature enough to recognize when something deserves deeper discernment. Because there are signs that certain dreams or impressions may carry more weight than ordinary imagination. And one of the first signs appears when a dream does not fade like the rest, but stays vivid, emotionally clear, and strangely connected to the real decisions already unfolding in your life. Chosen one. One of the clearest signs that a dream may deserve deeper reflection is the kind of emotional clarity it carries long after you wake up. Most dreams feel unstable. They are fragmented, inconsistent, and quickly dissolve once your mind returns to the ordinary rhythm of the day. You may remember a strange image or a disconnected moment, but the emotional force fades almost immediately because the dream was never meant to stay. Yet some dreams behave very differently. They do not scatter, they remain. The details feel unusually vivid. The atmosphere inside the dream feels heavier than normal, as though it carried more than random mental activity. You wake up not merely remembering it, but feeling it. The dream lingers in your body, in your thoughts, and sometimes even in your spirit. The images return to you throughout the day without effort. The emotional weight does not disappear when you become busy, and the more you reflect, the more the dream seems connected to something real already happening in your life. This is one of the reasons chosen ones begin paying attention to certain dreams while letting others go. The difference is not only in how unusual the dream looked, but in how clearly it remained. A dream that may carry meaning often comes with unusual vividness. You remember faces, places, words, symbols, or movements with a level of detail that ordinary dreams rarely produce. But even more important than the images is the emotional signature. Some dreams leave behind fear, warning, urgency, peace, comfort, or sobriety in a way that feels distinct from random imagination. The emotional tone itself seems to carry meaning. This does not mean every intense dream is a divine message. Human beings can dream vividly because of stress, memory, desire, or unresolved emotion. But when a dream remains clear, emotionally strong, and directly relevant to a real season of your life, it may be inviting reflection rather than dismissal. This is where wisdom becomes necessary. A meaningful dream does not always arrive as literal instruction. Often it comes symbolically. The images may not make immediate sense, yet the emotional center of the dream points toward a theme you are already living through. A house in disorder may connect to emotional instability or family tension. A blocked road may reflect a path that looks open in your mind, but feels closed in your spirit. Water, storms, doors, voices, children, darkness, light, falling, hiding, or returning are often the kind of images that stay with a person because they touch something already present beneath the surface of waking life. The dream does not always explain itself fully, but it creates enough clarity to make you pause. And that pause is often the first sign that something more than ordinary mental noise may be happening. Chosen ones often notice that these kinds of dreams are personally relevant. They do not feel abstract or disconnected from reality. Instead, they seem strangely tied to current decisions, relationships, or emotional challenges. The dream may not answer the whole question, but it highlights where attention is needed. It may bring to the surface a warning your waking mind was trying to ignore. It may reveal an emotional truth you did not want to face. It may confirm a concern you were too hesitant to trust during the day. Or it may bring unexpected encouragement in a season where you were quietly losing confidence. This is one reason Scripture treats dreams with seriousness, but never with carelessness. In biblical moments where God used dreams, the dreams were not random mystical experiences meant to entertain curiosity. They were connected to purpose, danger, direction, or preparation. Joseph's dreams were tied to future responsibility. Daniel's visions carried patterns and warnings far beyond his own life. The dreams mattered because they touched real assignments, real choices, and real consequences. That principle still matters now. If a dream carries meaning, it will often connect to something real, rather than simply impressing you emotionally. That is why chosen ones must resist two opposite mistakes. One mistake is dismissing every strong dream too quickly because it feels safer to ignore it than to reflect on it. The other mistake is becoming overly dramatic, immediately treating every unusual dream like unquestionable prophecy. Wisdom does neither. Wisdom pays attention without becoming reckless. It recognizes that dreams which remain vivid and emotionally clear may deserve prayer, reflection, and careful observation. Instead of rushing to force an interpretation, the mature person asks quieter questions. What in this dream stayed with me the strongest? What emotion remained after I woke up? What in my current life does this seem connected to? Did the dream produce panic, or did it produce clarity? Does the message align with the character of God, or does it simply stir fear and obsession? These questions help distinguish insight from noise. The point is not to chase mystery for its own sake. The point is to notice when something carries enough weight to be brought before God with humility. Sometimes a dream does not need immediate action. It needs patient reflection. Sometimes the meaning becomes clearer only as events unfold. Sometimes the dream is not giving full instruction, but inviting deeper awareness. This is why emotionally vivid dreams are often best handled with calmness rather than urgency. If they are meaningful, time, prayer, and discernment will usually reveal more. And if they are not, forcing meaning onto them will only create confusion. Still, dreams are only one kind of signal, because there are also moments in waking life when guidance does not come through sleep at all, but through a persistent internal awareness that keeps returning quietly and steadily until events themselves begin confirming what your spirit sensed before your mind had proof. Chosen one. Dreams are one way unusual signals can appear, but some of the strongest guidance does not come while you are asleep. It comes while you are fully awake, moving through ordinary life, when a quiet inner awareness keeps returning to the same situation even though you do not yet have enough visible evidence to explain it. This is what makes intuition so difficult for many people to trust. It rarely arrives as a loud command. It often feels like a steady knowing that something is right, wrong, safe, unsafe, aligned, or misaligned, before the facts fully catch up. You may meet a person who says all the right things, and yet something in you remains cautious. You may face an opportunity that looks perfect on paper, and still feel a hesitation you cannot logically defend. You may be moving toward a decision that others celebrate, but inwardly, you keep feeling that something is off. At first, many chosen ones try to dismiss that awareness because they do not want to seem irrational, fearful, or overly suspicious. They tell themselves they are overthinking. They call it nerves. They try to force peace into a situation that their spirit has not agreed with yet. But true intuition often behaves differently from ordinary fear. Fear tends to create noise, urgency, and scattered thinking. Discernment, on the other hand, often comes quietly. It lingers. It does not need to scream to remain present. You may try to move on, distract yourself, or explain it away, and still the same inner signal remains. That persistence is often what makes it important. Chosen ones frequently discover that intuition becomes meaningful not because it was dramatic, but because it stayed consistent. It kept returning, until reality finally revealed why. This is one of the clearest signs that you may not simply be imagining things. A passing emotional reaction usually fades. A real warning often remains. Over time, events begin confirming what you sensed before you had language for it. The person who felt slightly off turns out to be dishonest. The deal that looked promising reveals hidden complications. The environment that seemed exciting begins showing tension, confusion, or compromise that your spirit had already noticed before your mind had proof. This is why intuition should never be worshipped, but it also should not be ignored casually. It can function as an early warning system when it is grounded in wisdom rather than driven by anxiety. Scripture often connects this kind of discernment to wisdom that grows through prayer, humility, and spiritual maturity. James teaches that if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously without reproach. That matters because intuition becomes more trustworthy when it is not rooted in impulse. It becomes stronger when it grows inside a person who is learning to listen carefully, pray honestly, and reflect without emotional chaos. A chosen one who lives in constant panic will have difficulty distinguishing discernment from fear, but a chosen one who cultivates stillness, prayer, and disciplined reflection begins recognizing the difference more clearly. Intuition in that context is less like emotional impulse and more like quiet perception. It notices patterns early. It senses inconsistency beneath surface appearances. It catches what the faster, louder parts of life often miss. This is why many spiritually maturing people become slower in their decisions, not because they are indecisive, but because they are learning to respect the signals that come before visible confirmation. They are learning that not everything true can be proven immediately. Some things must first be discerned, then tested, then confirmed with time. This balance is important. A chosen one should never assume that every uneasy feeling is divine warning. Human emotions can be affected by wounds, stress, exhaustion, and past pain. That is why persistent intuition must be evaluated carefully. Does it remain when emotion settles down? Does it bring clarity or only confusion? Does it lead you toward peace and wisdom or toward paranoia and obsession? Does it align with spiritual maturity or does it simply feed fear? These questions help separate insight from imagination. True discernment often produces calm caution, not frantic panic. It slows you down rather than pushing you into dramatic reaction. It invites prayer, patience, and observation instead of emotional impulsiveness. When intuition is grounded this way, it becomes one of the ways God can quietly preserve your path. He may not always reveal the full reason immediately, but he may give you enough internal restraint to keep you from stepping forward too quickly. And often, that restraint itself is mercy. Many chosen ones look back and realize that the moments they felt strangely hesitant were some of the moments they were being protected most deeply. They did not have proof yet. They only had pause, but that pause created enough distance for truth to surface later. This is why you should never rush to silence a warning simply because it is hard to explain. Sometimes the inability to explain it is part of the test. Will you trust only what flatters your logic, or will you also respect what your spirit is quietly noticing? Over time, intuition becomes more reliable when it is submitted to God, filtered through wisdom, and tested through patient observation. And as that discernment grows, another pattern often begins showing up as well. The same message does not come only once. It begins repeating itself through different channels, different moments, and different forms of confirmation, until the signal becomes too consistent to ignore. Chosen one. One of the strongest signs that a dream or intuitive impression may deserve deeper reflection is when the same message begins repeating itself in different forms. An isolated experience can be emotional random, or incomplete. But when similar themes keep returning across different moments, the pattern becomes harder to dismiss. This is how discernment often deepens. God's guidance is not usually built on chaos. It tends to become clearer through consistency. A symbol appears in a dream, then a related thought keeps rising during prayer. Then a conversation unexpectedly echoes the same concern. Then a scripture passage seems to bring the same theme into focus again. None of these things alone should automatically be treated as absolute proof. But when they begin aligning, the repetition creates a weight that invites careful attention. This is why repeated themes matter so much. They move the experience beyond a single emotional moment and into the territory of pattern. Many chosen ones notice this when the same kind of imagery keeps showing up in dreams over time. It may not always look identical, but the emotional center remains similar. A repeated sense of warning, preparation, transition, exposure, healing, distance, or calling keeps returning through different symbols and different settings. You may dream of roads, doors, houses, water, storms, heights, children, darkness, light, or unfamiliar places. And though the details shift, the deeper message feels strangely connected. The repetition itself becomes significant because your spirit begins recognizing that this is not just one passing impression. Something is being highlighted. The same principle applies in waking life. You may have a quiet concern about a situation, then hear an unrelated conversation that touches the same theme. You may feel led to slow down, then find yourself reading a scripture that emphasizes patience, timing, or protection. You may sense caution around a relationship, and then repeated interactions begin confirming the same inconsistency your spirit had already noticed. This is where external confirmation becomes important. It does not replace discernment, but it strengthens it. When the same message begins echoing through dreams, prayer, observation, scripture, and life circumstances, it often means the signal deserves more than casual dismissal. Yet this is also where chosen ones must be especially careful. Repetition invites reflection, but it should not automatically lead to exaggeration. Not every repeated symbol is a prophecy. Not every recurring thought is a divine instruction. The human mind also repeats what it fears, desires, or obsesses over. That is why consistent patterns must still be tested carefully. The key question is not only whether something repeated, but what kind of fruit the repetition produces in you. Does it bring clarity, sobriety, and peace? Or does it stir anxiety, fixation, and emotional chaos? Does it align with wisdom, humility, and the character of God? Or does it simply flatter your fantasies or amplify your fears? Balanced interpretation matters because spiritual maturity is not measured by how many signs you collect, but by how wisely you respond to what you notice. Chosen ones often get into trouble when they try to force a full meaning too early. They feel a pattern, see a few confirmations, and rush to build a complete story before time has finished revealing it. But genuine discernment is patient. It allows repeated themes to speak slowly. It does not panic. It does not dramatize every coincidence. It observes. It prays. It reflects. It allows truth to grow stronger through consistency, rather than through emotional urgency. This patient posture is crucial, because some repeated patterns are invitations to prepare, not commands to react immediately. A recurring dream theme may be highlighting an area where healing is needed. A repeated internal caution may be warning you to move more slowly, not to make a dramatic accusation. A repeated scripture may be calling you into trust, surrender, or discipline, rather than giving you a literal prediction. The mature heart learns to let repetition lead to deeper awareness before it leads to action. Scripture itself often shows that important guidance was not always given once and then instantly understood. It unfolded over time through repeated confirmation, prayerful reflection, and careful interpretation. That principle still matters. God's guidance often becomes clearer as it repeats, not because he is trying to confuse you, but because he is giving you space to respond with humility instead of impulse. Repeated themes are often more meaningful than isolated experiences because they create a pattern your spirit can test, examine, and recognize with greater confidence. They bring you out of pure emotion and into something steadier. But even then, the goal is not to become dependent on signs. The goal is to become rooted in discernment. Signs, dreams, and intuitive confirmations are not meant to replace wisdom. They are meant to invite it. And once you begin understanding that, another important lesson becomes unavoidable. Meaningful signals require a humble heart, because without humility and patience, even genuine insight can become distorted by assumption. Chosen one. After walking through dreams that stay vivid, intuitions that persist, and patterns that repeat across different moments, the most important lesson becomes clear. The goal is not to become fascinated with mystery. The goal is to become mature in discernment. Dreams and intuitive impressions can be meaningful, but meaning alone is not enough. Meaning must be handled with wisdom. This is where many people go wrong. Some ignore every unusual experience because they are afraid of being deceived or misunderstood. Others go to the opposite extreme and begin building their lives around every dream, every symbol, every repeated phrase, and every emotional impression. One side becomes closed to guidance. The other becomes vulnerable to confusion. But the chosen one is called to a steadier path. God's guidance is not meant to make you unstable. It is meant to make you clearer. It is not meant to pull you into obsession with hidden signs. It is meant to deepen your ability to walk with humility, peace, and wisdom. That is why discernment must always come before assumption. A dream may stir your spirit, but that does not mean you should force an interpretation immediately. An intuition may feel strong, but that does not mean every emotion attached to it is accurate. A repeated pattern may deserve attention, but it still needs prayer, reflection, and patience before you decide what it truly means. Spiritual maturity does not rush to label every unusual experience. It slows down enough to test what is being felt, to compare it with truth, to examine the fruit it produces, and to ask whether it aligns with the character of God. This is one of the clearest differences between wisdom and spiritual impulsiveness. Impulsiveness wants certainty immediately. Wisdom is willing to wait until clarity becomes strong enough to stand without strain. Chosen ones often feel deeply, notice quickly, and sense things before others do. But that sensitivity becomes a gift only when it is anchored in discipline. Without discipline, intuition can turn into anxiety, dreams can turn into obsession, and repeated impressions can turn into self-created stories. But when those same experiences are brought into prayer, humility, and patient observation, they can become opportunities for real insight. This is why peace matters so much. God's guidance may challenge you, slow you down, or call you into uncomfortable honesty, but it usually carries a kind of inner steadiness, even when the message is serious. Confusion, panic, and frantic interpretation often reveal that the mind is moving faster than wisdom. True discernment may not answer every question instantly, but it tends to produce sobriety rather than chaos. It makes you more attentive, not more unstable. It leads you toward reflection, not compulsion. It deepens your trust in God, not your dependence on emotional intensity. This is why reflection is essential. A dream that lingers should be prayed over. An inner warning should be examined carefully. A repeated theme should be written down, noticed, and tested over time, rather than rushed into dramatic conclusions. Patience protects you from assumption. It allows meaning to unfold, instead of forcing it into a shape your emotions already wanted. Many chosen ones discover that what first seemed confusing becomes much clearer after time, prayer, and lived experience have done their work. Something that felt symbolic eventually connects to a decision, a relationship, a warning, or a season of growth, in a way that becomes obvious only later. In that sense, discernment often works in layers. God may not show everything at once, because the point is not merely information. The point is formation. He is not only trying to tell you something, he is shaping how you listen. He is teaching you to become a person who can notice unusual signals without losing balance, who can honor spiritual impressions without becoming superstitious, and who can remain open to guidance while still rooted in wisdom. This is why the healthiest response to dreams and intuition is not fear and not fascination. It is humble attentiveness. It is the willingness to say, "This may matter, so I will hold it carefully before God." That posture changes everything. It frees you from the pressure to know everything immediately. It protects you from exaggerating every sign. It also keeps your heart open enough to receive guidance when God truly is trying to highlight something. Because yes, there are moments when dreams or intuitive impressions become invitations to deeper reflection about your direction, your purpose, your relationships, or your next step. But those moments reach their full value only when they are interpreted through spiritual grounding. When wisdom and humility guide the process, unusual experiences can become helpful rather than confusing. They can bring light instead of noise. They can prompt caution, encouragement, or preparation without pulling you into assumption. And that is the final lesson the chosen one must carry. Do not chase mystery more than you chase wisdom. Do not seek signs more than you seek God. Let peace, patience, prayer, and discernment shape the way you interpret what you feel and what you see. Because when your inner life is grounded in Him, dreams and intuition stop being sources of fear or pride and become what they were always meant to be: quiet opportunities for insight, clarity, and deeper trust in the one who guides your path. Before we finish, take a moment to reflect on this message. If you've had dreams, inner warnings, or repeated impressions that stayed with you longer than usual, do not rush to dismiss them, but do not rush to exaggerate them either. Bring them to God with prayer, patience, and wisdom. If this message spoke to your journey, like this video so it can reach someone else who may need the same clarity. Share it with a person who has been seeking direction lately. And if you want more content about the Chosen One journey, discernment, and spiritual growth, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next message.